few questions. Would like you to respond in complete answers.
Okay.
And we are rolling. First question I ask everybody is give me your first and last name. And I can't say what years that you were involved in the movement because you were actually born into the movement. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, I would say that I was born into the movement. My name is Jane Moore, and Jane Bond Moore. My maiden name is Bond, and I would say I was born into the movement. And I can explain that if you want it. That I feel, and I guess Michael knows it, I feel our family has been involved in the movement for a long time. And actually, my brother James reminded me last night that we've been part of Atlanta off and on for at least 100 and some years, because our grandfather was a minister of a very small Congregationalist church on Chestnut Street. It's still there, Rush Memorial. And he was my father's father, and he was very involved in the movement. He worked for the YMCA, he worked with black soldiers, he worked with the NAACP, and he was just very active. And then, of course, my father he was an academic, and he worked at black colleges, because when he was growing up, blacks or coloreds, as we were called, or Negroes, whatever we were called then, could go to school in the North and get graduate degrees in the North, but they weren't able to teach in any schools in the North. The schools they went to school in, they couldn't teach in, so they had to come back south and teach in the black colleges. And he was very, very much concerned with that was his field, the education of the Negro, and had a lot of love and faith for our race and for everyday black people and the contributions they made, just keeping on, as they say, just doing the right thing every day. There's so many black people like that who aren't in the headlines, who struggle hard, bring up their children, and their children are fine. Their children might get a little more education than their parents, and it keeps on. And they're never recognized, but they are what has kept us, alive here in this country, I think.
You have another unique position, and I don't know whether you consider this or not, and that is you were a woman civil rights pioneer, okay? When you went into law, when you made your participations in the movement, think of it. What other black female lawyers did you know coming up?
Well, actually, Constance Baker Motley, and then there were lawyers here in Atlanta, Isabel Webster, whose nephew I went to law school with, Prudence Herndon, and then there were others I can't name right now, but my husband could. But there were a few black women lawyers here.
Then I stand corrected, because I've never heard, except for Ms. Motley, I've never heard of those names before.
Yeah, and I wasn't Prudence Herndon and Isabel Webster were lawyers here in Atlanta. Now, I wasn't a lawyer until I went to California, so during the time I lived in Atlanta, I wasn't a lawyer. I did attend graduate school, but never got my master's, which led my husband to say, "You'll be in graduate school forever." And then if you get a PhD, what can you do with it? You have to work for someone. Go to law school, you'll be out in 3 years, and you can work for yourself. And then I went to law school, but that was in California, not in Georgia, not here.
Talk to me about what you saw then as a woman born into the movement, because not everybody was, and as somebody who obviously came from a family of independent thinkers. Mm-hmm. Did you see the changes that were taking place, having the ramifications that they've had, or did you think that it was going to be another, here we are, more struggle? I mean, what did you perceive as a young woman in the civil rights years?
Okay. Well, first let me say that in the very beginning of the sit-ins, I wasn't here. I was in graduate school at Indiana University, but my brother Julian would write me letters because we had no text, no email. Just that's the only way you communicate, or telephone calls. So he would write me letters and tell me what they were doing. But no,
Wait just a second, please, Mr. Ward, we'll be right out.
I actually thought at one period that the revolution was going to come and that everything would be changed and, you know, the lowly would be raised high, the high would be brought down. I believed that. I thought that most racial problems would be solved. I mean, I really didn't think it through, and I have to say, I don't want to blame myself. I don't think I was the only one, and I think even if I had thought, well, if I had been old enough to reflect and say, well, you know, everything's not going to go as you think. You know, you've had enough experience in life to know there are always unintended consequences or unintended results that you have no control over. I don't think that I would have thought we would be so enmeshed still in discrimination and racism. That just had never, it did not occur to me. And sometimes it can be very discouraging to think about it and say, you know, we had all that hope and all that, people did all that work, but look where we are. I mean, I can't deny that we've made great strides forward. And when we moved to Atlanta, you couldn't have had 5 black people sitting in City Hall who worked there unless we were janitors and maids. We couldn't have been like that. I remember when we first moved that Julian and I went to get our driver's license, and we went to the window. The clerk was behind